Hey everyone, it's T and welcome back to my channel. This video is going to be a lot more serious than all of the other videos I've done on this channel. It's a topic that I normally wouldn't touch with like a 10-foot pole, but I feel that's important for me to talk about, and I haven't really seen anyone else talk about it or call it out. I know that by me making this video, I'm giving the person or the situation kind of exactly what they want by giving them attention, shining a light on it. But the thing of it is, this person still has fans, they still have a following, and the information I feel like they're presenting their followers and their fans is dangerous, as well as anyone who's stumbling on the internet trying to find information on the topic. This can kind of lead them down a dark path. So let me stop rambling and kind of get to the point of why we're here. Earlier in December, the Rewired Soul, aka Chris Boutte, started a series against Big Pharma and exposing, quote unquote, the antidepressant industry. He was supposed to do like a week-long series, but it looks like he's just going to do the 2 videos on it for now. If he decides to expand the series, I will probably make a second video, but for now this is it. Also, please don't send any hate to Chris or his fans or anything like that. I'm not really attacking him as a person. I'm more attacking his arguments and his motives because they don't really make sense to me. The reason why I'm kind of making this video is because, like I said, I think the things that he is saying in these videos have a dangerous potential, not only to his fans, but to people who are looking for answers, stumbling on the internet, trying to find information on antidepressants and things like that. The decision to take antidepressants, I feel, is totally up to the person in question. So, like, some people don't like the way that they make them feel. Some people feel like they're a zombie, they don't like it, and that's fine. As long as someone's not a danger to themselves or others, they shouldn't have to take medication if they don't want to. That's a personal decision. But to frame taking medication or antidepressants in the way that Chris has been framing it is very, like I said, dangerous to me. And I haven't seen anyone say anything about it. So I know I don't have the biggest platform, but as someone who is a mental health advocate, who does have depression, who has a bachelor's in psych. I am not a mental health professional though. I'm not a psychologist, a psychiatrist. I'm not a counselor or anything like that. But I do have a little education pertaining to the topic, as well as some research that I did and some anecdotal evidence, although I know anecdotal evidence isn't proof positive or negative of something, but I feel that that could add to the conversation. So let's just jump into it. The first video is called Exposing the Antidepressant Lies, and this was 2 weeks ago, so it came out on December 16th, this video. So Chris opens up the video saying that Big Pharma doesn't care. Big Pharma is basically what some people call the pharmaceutical industry. So people who make the drugs, sell them, test them, things like that. Usually when people use Big Pharma, they're using it in kind of a derogatory, demonized form of the industry. So it's kind of framing them as this kind of abstract entity with corporations, regulators, politicians, physicians, all kind of coming together to maliciously keep people sick and everything like that. According to a professor of writing, Robert Blaskowitz, sorry if I'm mispronouncing it, but according to him, the Big Pharma conspiracy theory has 4 classic traits. So the first is the assumption that the conspiracy is perpetrated by a small malevolent force. It's also the belief that the public at large is ignorant to the truth of this, and that believers treat lack of evidence as evidence, and finally that the arguments deployed in support of the theory are irrational, misconceived, or otherwise mistaken. So it's kind of like some consider to be like a mass hysteria thing. Think whatever you will about the pharmaceutical companies. All businesses, we can say, are out there for profit. You know what I mean? Because that's the purpose of a business. I'm not saying that's correct, but when you think about businesses in general, we live in a capitalist society. Of course, businesses are going to kind of care more about their profits than they are, say, employees or their customers. But with that in mind, that also doesn't mean, you know, there's some kind of malicious conspiracy thing going on. Now, do I agree with everything the pharmaceuticals companies do? No. And honestly, I think the way that they operate is a symptom of the shitty healthcare system that we have in the US, more so than the pharmaceutical companies and corporations and politicians and stuff banding together to fuck over the people. The healthcare system is shit, and whatever happens with the pharmaceutical companies, I feel, is a symptom of that. But at the same time, that's not to say that there aren't companies or people that work for these companies that do care about the people, if that makes sense. So my problem with Chris's argument, although I don't necessarily disagree that pharmaceutical companies are out for profit, because they're companies, and all companies want profit. I mean, that's a no-brainer. But where I disagree is the way that he's framing it. He's making it seem like it's some giant conspiracy, like antidepressants don't help people and they're just being sold with malicious intent to kind of keep people sick and ignorant and down, you know what I mean? So I feel like saying Big Pharma or saying, oh, I'm exposing Big Pharma is kind of unethical in a way. It's kind of feeding into conspiracy theorists. This is giving too much credence to that crowd. It's kind of like clickbaity, triggering, kind of feeding into that crowd. Chris was inspired to make these videos by the work of Dr. Irving Kirsch. He started reading one of his latest books, and so this is kind of what sparked his series. If you're unfamiliar with the doctor, he was born in March of 1943, and he's an associate director of the program of placebo studies and a lecturer in medicine at Harvard and Beth Israel Deaconess Medical Center. He's also a professor emeritus of psychology at University of Hull in Plymouth in the UK and University of Connecticut in the US. Most of his work has focused on the placebo effect, expectancy, hypnosis, and antidepressants. The main study that everyone cites him about, kind of what put him on the map, is listening to Prozac but hearing placebo, a meta-analysis of antidepressant medication, and basically in this study he states that antidepressants work about on par or a little less than placebos, I believe, according to his study that he did. There has been some criticism of the doctor since his main work has been in placebos. His belief that placebos can be just as effective or more effective than the medicines that we're giving, that the medicines that we are given or giving aren't as potent or do the things that they say they do, but because we expect them to work that way, that's why they do. That's why people feel better. The drug companies are just kind of selling us these things without them actually doing what they say that they do. That's kind of been the bulk of his work. He has gotten a lot of criticism though, because his work hasn't really been peer reviewed. Also, he drew pretty good criticism because he doesn't really respond to critics or countering studies. There were some variations or things that he didn't keep in mind when he was doing the studies. So there's been a considerable amount of criticism on his work. There is a Psychology Today article from 2012 that a lot of people did post in the comments on the YouTube channel, I think, as well as on Twitter. I believe someone did link to it when he released these videos. So I'll link that as well, flash it on the screen so you guys can see it. But there also have been countering studies in regards to the placebo effect in antidepressants. His study, I believe, was done in 98. So there's a more recent study in 2018 that kind of counters it, and I will also leave that below. Let's jump into now Chris's arguments. So in the first video, one of the reasons why Chris cites possibly not taking antidepressants or why they could be bad for you is the side effects. So some people can have really bad side effects when starting or stopping the medications, and those can range from things like nausea, headache, loss of appetite, things like that, to bigger things like worsening depression, suicidal ideation. All medications have side effects. No matter what you're taking, be it an antidepressant pill or a cold medicine, you are going to have side effects. Possibly. Not everyone has side effects, and they're different for all people. So to say that, oh, well, you shouldn't take this because of side effects. Like, all medicines have side effects. So by that, should we not take any medicine? Like, I don't understand his argument there. Also, your doctor can adjust your dose or get you on another medication. So if you are having really bad side effects on one medication, they can change it to another. They can change the dose. It kind of takes a while sometimes for some people to find the right antidepressant for them or the right combination of drugs to get their depression under control. For me, I'm pretty lucky. I just have like a low dose of Celexa right now for full transparency. Not really having too many side effects. I've been on it for like a month now. I have taken it before, and usually I just get like nauseous, sometimes a little bit headachy. But coming off it, because I did come off it before and now I'm back on it. But coming off it does kind of suck, to be honest. Like, I feel extremely nauseous, a little bit low energy. Like, it just feels like I'm sick all the time if I come off it. So, for a little bit, but then it goes away. But talking with your doctor about weaning yourself off of the medication to lessen that, that's also something that can be considered. Chris completely ignored working with your doctor to help combat any side effect, or to find the right medication for you, or to help you wean off it so you don't have as bad side effects, was completely ignored within his argument. The other thing that he argued is the cost. Now, I couldn't find the price of the average cost of antidepressants online. I did find data from 2005. A report from Consumer Reports from 2005 has the average cost for antidepressants as $39 to $74 a month. There can be costs hitting up to 90s or in the hundreds a month, depending on if you have insurance or not. I've always, thank God, have been fortunate enough to have insurance. My current insurance is kind of shitty, but the drug plan is pretty good. So I only have to pay like 81 cents for my medication. But I know that's not the case for a lot of people. Some people don't have insurance. Some people have different insurance, and the price can vary. So I completely understand how cost could be a deterrent in people getting antidepressants. But there's prescription assistant programs that people can apply for. There's, I believe it's called PAD in the state that I live in. There's also those GoodRx cards, or like other cards that you can use to save money on medication. Unfortunately, cost can be a hurdle for antidepressants, and I agree with that. But I wouldn't cite that as a reason for someone not to take them. The pharmaceutical companies do set the cost and everything like that, but it's more, in my opinion, a symptom of our healthcare system. So until that gets fixed, the drug prices for any type of medication, including antidepressants, aren't going to get fixed. So until the healthcare system is fixed, this is going to be a problem for any kind of medication. When my mom had cancer and she needed to take medicine for it, she often couldn't afford the medicine. It was between us eating or paying rent and her getting her medication, and she would often choose food and rent over her medication. It's a shitty thing, and until our healthcare system is fixed, that's always going to be a deterrent for people to get medication and seek help for things. But if you can, there are assistant programs out there that can try to take advantage of, or talk to like a mental health professional, your doctor, a case manager, maybe someone with some kind of medical experience or connections, and they could possibly try to help you out. For Chris's third argument in the first video, he says that there's a lie that depression is something that we're stuck with. This isn't a direct quote. I'm paraphrasing. The exact number 3 that he flashed on the screen says the lie depression is something we're stuck with. Depression is a disease. And basically, if you're unfamiliar with exactly what depression is, it's classified as a mood disorder. Depression is often referred to as clinical depression, depressive disorder, major depressive disorder. But basically, it is a mood disorder that causes symptoms affecting the way that you feel, think, handle daily activities like sleeping, eating, working. To be diagnosed with depression, you do have to have symptoms present most of the day, nearly every day, for at least 2 weeks. There's all different types. There is seasonal affective disorder, SAD, which people typically get starting late fall, early winter, and that goes away during spring and summer. There's been a lot of theories as to the causes of depression, a chemical imbalance in the brain with certain neurotransmitters not being enough, like serotonin, there not being enough of that in the brain, genetic factors like it running in your family, environmental factors, psychological factors. A lot of people say ACEs, adverse childhood experiences, such as your parents getting divorced, having other types of trauma and stuff happen to you as a child, that can help not only cause like increases in the risk of physical symptoms like higher blood pressure, heart attack, stroke, cancer in your future, but it can also increase the odds of you having a substance abuse disorder or a mental illness. So there's a bunch of things that come together to possibly cause depression. A lot of people go with the biopsychosocial model, meaning that your biological, your psychological, your genetic, environmental factors all come together to help either repress or express genes or cause mental health issues. So there's a lot of theories as to the cause of depression, although there's no definitive like one thing that could cause it. Depression isn't made up. It's actually a thing. And the way he kind of frames it makes it seem like, oh, you know, it's just kind of there to help sell drugs a little bit. He also kind of throws out that the chemical imbalance theory is a lie. I did look into that, and there are a few studies there that show that the chemical imbalance theory could be incorrect, but if you do look in any kind of psychology textbook or anything like that, it will show that that is one of the causes. So there may be something to what he's saying, but I wouldn't definitively outright say, oh, the chemical imbalance thing is a myth. Because, like, when you take the antidepressants that are supposed to, like, help increase those chemicals in your brain, the neurotransmitters, often people do feel better. So there is something to that. So even though there are studies somewhat supporting now that the chemical imbalance theory may be incorrect, I personally do not feel confident saying that that's an outright lie like Chris did. So until more information comes out on that, I'm still going to be in the camp that chemical imbalance is actually a thing. Chris also mentions the Hamilton scale. The Hamilton scale is basically a tool that doctors can use to help measure depression. It's basically an assessment tool for depression that was created originally in the 1960s. There's one for anxiety as well. For anxiety, it's the HAM-A. For depression, it's the HAM-D. In some assessments, there's 21 questions, but most people do the scoring by the first 17. It's more like an interview style where you're being assessed. And Chris mentions that when you take antidepressants, your Hamilton scale score for some people only goes up by a few points, while if you just get better sleep, it'll go up by 6 points. And he states that ultimately getting better sleep is the best thing that you can do for your depression. The funny thing about that is, depression often fucks with your sleep. My sleeping used to be so fucked up. Like, I would sleep way too much Sometimes, like in the daytime, I would just, when I'm not working, I'd just sleep the day away if I could. And then at night, not really sleep at all. My sleep has been a lot better since I started taking antidepressants, but for a lot of people, sleeping too much, sleeping too little is often a symptom of depression. So if you're depressed and you're not really or can't really do anything else about it, then trying to get better sleep is damn near impossible. So just, in my opinion, saying, oh, get some sleep, you'll be great, it's kind of stupid. Paradoxical, if that's the right word. Like, it doesn't make sense. The Hamilton scale is also used in conjunction with other tools or assessments as well to help gauge someone's depression. So it's not like the Hamilton scale is the be-all, end-all of assessing depression. So that was pretty much all that he said in the first video. The second video is titled How Big Pharma Manipulates Antidepressant Data, and this video was released on December 17th, so the next day after he released the first video. So, according to Chris, companies can send in studies they want to publish to show good effects versus the studies that don't. Basically, how he explained it was the drug companies or the manufacturers who are selling antidepressants can, of course, conduct their own studies to see how the drug measures up, and then when they go for FDA approval, they can send the FDA whatever reports that they want to send. So in this, Chris is saying that they can just send in only good reports of it being effective and working over reports that show that the drug doesn't work as well or not at all. And that kind of leaves many studies unpublished. That's really kind of shitty, to be honest. And unfortunately, we are starting to see more industries kind of do that sort of thing. Like, they're making big changes to how pork is manufactured now. Like, inspectors can get their hands on the meat less on the lines. They want the people to start killing the animals or slaughtering the animals faster. The oil companies as well, they've had some regulatory things peeled back. I know that's comparing apple to oranges, but unfortunately in the US we're seeing a lot of companies now kind of regulating, quote unquote, themselves or conducting studies or processes that may not be the best for the people that they're serving. And that is kind of shitty that we don't get to see all of the studies. But there are things that we can do, like Chris mentions, like use the Freedom of Information Act to request any unpublished data. But the thing with that is, say for example, people did take the time to fully research the medications that they're going on, which is something that I think everyone should do. I feel like we should all be informed about the medications that we're taking, at least in some aspect, like, oh, what are the side effects? How's it supposed to work? What's it supposed to do? Things like that. At least some kind of surface level knowledge, something kind of simple. So I feel like it's important that we should ask the doctor and everything like that to make sure that whatever we're taking is right for us. But with the Freedom of Information Act, basically if you're a US citizen, according to the way he explained it, you can request these unpublished studies. But the thing of it is this kind of puts the burden on proof on the doctors and the consumers. And while we should at least have some surface level knowledge of what we're taking, and while doctors should have a pretty good amount of answers about the medications that we're taking, it assumes that any kind of lay person can understand some of the more complicated science involved. So it assumes that any kind of Joe Schmo off the street who may not have the best education will understand the studies. So they may misunderstand something, or they may look at the study and go, oh, that seems okay. Or they just may be totally lost. And I don't think that's right to place that burden of proof on the consumer. And again, that's a symptom of our healthcare system, to be honest. There should be kind of tighter regulations for things and more transparency so people don't have to go and digging for information. That way they feel safe and comfortable trusting the manufacturer and their doctor. I know that's not possible for some people, but saying, oh, well, you should be spending a ridiculous amount of time looking into things seems a little unfair. Not to say that it's not a good habit to know what you're putting in your body, but it's also assuming that the average person would be able to effectively understand the study that is unpublished and make the correct decision based on that. Some people don't even understand kind of the lay terms for information that we have out there about other medications and things. So to put that burden of proof on the consumer, like Chris kind of wants or is advocating for, can put whoever is taking the medication at a disadvantage. And it also implies all companies are dishonest. We live in a capitalist society. Take what you will from that. Not all people working for these companies are shitty. Not all companies are shitty. So, I mean, it kind of, to me, implies that there's just dishonesty rampant across the industry. I mean, I don't work for the drug company or anything like that. I don't know, there could be. But I personally like to have faith. Chris also advocates the use of more natural stuff, which I can somewhat agree with. He mentions marijuana can help with depression. However, if you have anxiety or if your anxiety is at a certain level, marijuana is not good for treating depression. It can actually make things worse and make you more anxious. So if you do have anxiety, marijuana may be something that you would want to step away from. He also mentioned CBD and St. John's wort as well. St. John's wort is like a natural herb that has been cited as lessening depression, but is not FDA approved. Neither is CBD and marijuana, although they're working on it. And just kind of to play devil's advocate here, let's just say supplement companies and the marijuana industry do become, subsidized or FDA approved or brought into the fold here. They could also have their own agendas. They could also be concerned about profits over people. So just because something is natural doesn't mean that it's good for you. You should always consult a doctor or a health professional before trying any of these things, because if you're on other medication, if you have other health conditions, these kind of things can possibly agitate that. That's just something to be mindful of. Just because something is supposed to be natural doesn't mean that it's going to be good for you. With that all being said, there does appear to be some studies conducted on a compound in magic mushrooms and other hallucinogens. The active ingredient is psilocybin. Sorry if I'm pronouncing it wrong. But a lot of studies are being done about that being used to treat depression, which I'm really interested in. So I'm kind of interested in seeing where that goes and how that works, because that's also something more natural. It's also something to keep in mind for the future. I'll link studies for that as well. I'll also link references like I normally do. Another big issue that I had is Chris really didn't link any kind of sources for his work. They were kind of minimal for these videos. I basically think this series is pretty dangerous because, like I said, he still has a fan base, and perpetuating these ideas to that fan base could lead them down a dangerous path to harmful alternative medicines or alternative healers rather than a mental health professional, or just completely turn someone away who needs an antidepressant from trying to get help and getting on an antidepressant. I just feel like they were dangerous videos to make, particularly from someone who claims to be on an antidepressant, which Chris does. So, I don't know. I don't really understand his motives here. I just think it was dangerous, and I just wanted to at least have something thrown out into the ether, screaming to just not listen to this man's advice. Like, he has no kind of mental health license, and to be saying things like this, to frame antidepressants in such a way is dangerous. Like, I'm wondering, would he frame cancer medication in this way? Would he frame medication for bipolar in this way? It just seems very suspect to me. So I just wanted to make a video, throw something out in the ether to counter his arguments, and hopefully someone who did see Chris's video, or who could see Chris's video, is steered away from it and maybe thinks twice about listening to him. But yeah, I guess I'll wrap up the video here. Let me know what your thoughts are. If I made any mistakes, please let me know. I'll be more than happy to fix them. I will pin them in a comment if you guys noticed any mistakes. I did try to do my best to be thorough in what I was talking about. I didn't know some things, but I tried to find out what I could. I will see you guys next time. Thank you for listening. Bye. Bye, bye, bye.